Armand Qureshi was known as a man who could not be touched. People called him a legend in the business world. A genius who turned small ideas into giant companies and risks into mountains of profit. He didn't inherit his wealth. He built it, step by step, year after year. He faced losses, betrayals, and countless sleepless nights until success finally bowed before him. At 45, Armand was one of the richest men in the country. His empire spanned technology, real estate, and energy. His face was a regular feature in newspapers, and business students studied his interviews like sacred texts. Many compared his sharp mind to leaders from Forbes magazine, and some even whispered that he had the discipline of entrepreneurs from New York City or London. But Armand's life wasn't just about money. It was about absolute control. He controlled his time, his schedule, his meetings, and even the people around him. His day started at 5 in the morning without an alarm. He would exercise in his private gym, eyes glued to international market news. Afterward, he would sit in his glass office on the top floor of his headquarters, looking down at the city as if he owned every building in sight. He rarely smiled in public. His face was a calm, serious, unreadable mask. When he walked into a room, conversations would die down. People stood straighter. Assistants rushed to adjust files, and managers nervously double-checked their reports. He didn't need to raise his voice to show power. His silence was more than enough. Security guards followed him everywhere, forming a human wall that made sure no stranger ever came close. He traveled in a convoy of gleaming black luxury cars, each one shining like a mirror. Drivers would open doors before he even reached them. Cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, but he rarely answered. To the public, Armand looked like a king of the modern world, a man who had everything money could possibly buy. Mansions with infinity pools, private jets waiting on tarmacs, watches worth more than most people's homes, and a garage filled with rare cars that collectors could only dream of. Yet there was something distant about him. He no longer walked alone in crowded markets or sat in small tea shops listening to random stories. He no longer experienced the simple, beautiful chaos of ordinary life. His world was sanitized, organized, protected, and controlled. Every meeting was planned, every movement scheduled, every risk calculated down to the last decimal. That afternoon, he had just finished giving a speech at a major corporate conference. The hall had been filled with thunderous applause, bright lights, and expensive suits. He spoke about success, discipline, and building an empire from nothing. The audience listened intently, scribbling notes as if each word was made of gold. When the event ended, his team quickly surrounded him, guiding him toward the exit. Outside, his long fleet of luxury cars was parked in a perfect line, engines humming, drivers waiting. The sunlight reflected off the polished metal, making the cars look like a royal parade. People stood behind barriers, watching him with admiration. Some whispered his name, others raised their phones to record him, and many simply stared at the powerful man walking so confidently toward his vehicles. Armand adjusted his suit slightly and continued walking, his expression unchanged, his steps steady and calm. He was used to the attention, the respect, the distance. In that moment, he felt completely and utterly untouchable. Untouchable by failure, untouchable by fear, untouchable by the ordinary problems that troubled normal people. He believed he had built walls strong enough to protect him from any surprises, strong enough to keep his world stable and secure. But he didn't know that life doesn't care about walls. As he approached the first car in his fleet, security guards scanning the surroundings carefully, everything looked perfect and under control. The city noise felt distant, the crowd seemed harmless, and the future felt predictable. For a man who had mastered business, power, and discipline, the world was a chessboard where he always made the final move. But sometimes, even the strongest players forget one simple, humbling truth. No one is truly untouchable. In a world where every minute is scheduled and every outcome is predicted, Adrian Thorne was the master of his own universe. As the CEO of Thorne Industries, his life was a fortress of control, built with wealth and sealed with precision. But even the most fortified walls can have a crack. And his appeared in the form of a girl named Alara. Alara was a whirlwind in his meticulously ordered life. She worked at a small flower shop he passed daily. Her clothes were a mismatch of vibrant colors, and her smile was as untamed as the wildflowers she arranged. She was everything he wasn't, and for some reason she seemed determined to shatter his peace. It started subtly. A bright yellow post-it note left on his car windshield reading, "Don't take the bridge today." He scoffed, crumpled it, and took his usual route. That afternoon, news broke of a multi-car pileup on the bridge, closing it for hours. Coincidence, he told himself. Then, a week later, as he was about to sign a billion-dollar merger, a delivery boy arrived with a single, wilting daisy and a note in the same familiar scrawl. The numbers lie. Annoyed by the interruption, he almost ignored it. But something in the urgency of her message made him pause. He ordered a last-minute audit. The audit revealed a catastrophic flaw, a hidden debt that would have bankrupted his company. He pulled out of the deal just in time. Now, Adrian was intrigued. This wasn't a coincidence. He sought her out. He found her at the flower shop, humming as she trimmed the thorns from roses. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice colder than he intended. Alara looked up, her eyes wide and surprisingly calm. "Someone who wants to help. Help, by leaving me cryptic notes." "How do you know these things?" She just smiled, a sad, gentle smile. "I see things, connections, dangers that hide in plain sight." She explained that she saw patterns, threads of cause and effect that others missed. She saw a dark thread attached to him, one that was pulling tighter every day. Adrian was a man of logic and facts. He didn't believe in visions or premonitions. He thought she was either a con artist or delusional. He tried to dismiss her, to push her out of his life and restore his perfect order. But her warnings kept coming, and they were never wrong. Don't trust the man in the gray suit. The 4:30 p.m. train is a trap. Each time, he reluctantly listened, and each time, a disaster was narrowly averted. He started to realize that his controlled world was an illusion. Dangers he never imagined were lurking just beneath the surface. His rivals, his supposed allies, even people within his own company, the threats were everywhere. And this strange, penniless girl was the only one who seemed to see them. He found himself relying on her, seeking her out not just for her warnings, but for the moments of chaos she brought into his sterile life. With her, he wasn't CEO Adrian Thorne. I was just Adrian. She showed him how to appreciate the rain, the taste of cheap street food, the beauty of an untamed garden. But the closer they got, the more agitated Alara became. The dark thread she saw was growing thicker, more menacing. "It's getting closer, Adrian," she whispered one evening, her face pale with fear. "It's not just your business they're after, it's you. And it's coming soon." Adrian finally understood. Alara wasn't trying to save his company or his fortune. She was trying to save his life. The fortress he had built wasn't to keep the world out. It was a cage, and the real predator was already inside. And now, the man who controlled everything had to put his life in the hands of a girl who had nothing but her strange, terrifying gift. The final confrontation was coming, and he had no idea if her warnings would be enough to survive it. The city is a symphony of organized chaos, a relentless hum of traffic, sirens, and millions of lives intersecting for a fleeting moment for one another.
you.